All right, everybody, welcome. I hope this is better. Still some hiccups here with the new streaming setup. But I hope everybody is doing well this morning. Just going to set a couple more things up here. Let me know if you cannot hear me or see me, or if this audio is not coming through. Good morning, Robert. Take two. Thank you for joining. Thank you. It's all a little bit annoying when I tell you, it's too many subscriptions, too many different things. But we'll work through it. A little bit of a rise amidst the chaos. All right. This is how it looks. Dollar terms. I wouldn't jump to any conclusions here. It's just too quick as far as the Bitcoin timeline, right? It's already down a little bit below what I pulled this into in the model, 70,600 at the moment. I pulled this in like an hour ago, 71,000. Thank you, Robert. Let me know, people on Twitter, if you cannot hear me. Think you can. Although I am getting errors that I'm not on Twitter. Could it be? Annoying. Might just be on YouTube. It is what it is. Let it be. I'm not going to reset it. Yeah. Just for our YouTube loyalists today. So, I don't want to lecture or anything, but I have a bunch of charts to, again, hopefully give some perspective. As I mentioned on the show with Danny, we're getting closer and closer to the line. Might not seem that way, but we are. Here is something that you would use mostly for linear or exponential charts. Doesn't really work on a power curve, okay, because here, quantile regression, quantile, each of these lines eventually gets closer to the black line. So the variance of the entire thing actually gets closer to the black line, which is that's a well-fitting power curve. But with exponential, you can't do that. Sorry, with power regressions, you can't do what I call here the evolving regression. And really I know it's the same bands. Maybe I should color them differently or something. But here I'm doing multiplication over or under the trend at the time. So we get to these large numbers once we set them in. We don't set them in until I think 2011, 2012. But it just simply won't work. The Bitcoin, I mean, of course, anything is possible. But as you can see, right, getting 7.7x, 7.8x, the trend line seems pretty difficult right now. or even getting to the 9, my old lingo, the 90th percentile, quantile, 250K. That will happen eventually, but even, it didn't happen this last cycle. Okay. Same would happen on the negative side. I think getting 90% below trend, which plenty of people have called for, right, on the scary YouTube videos. 15K, 16K, that's this line right down here. It seems highly unlikely. Even the 10th percentile here, 20th, maybe more, 60K. We're definitely close to there. But so the point is, this is not the best analysis if we were looking at power-based regressions, which we are. It's better to use the quantile. Okay, and now I'm finally unified in my approach that I can show you both. It is possible, though, that sometimes the regression can work out where this could work. Okay, so an example is gold. This is still quantile, and I'm actually showing you 20 bands, or every fifth. So you can see where most of the activity happens. And most of the activity happens here, right? It's the same in the dollar chart until here. Now we're just unbelievably cheap for the gold bugs. 14 ounces of Bitcoin. 14 ounces of Bitcoin. 14 ounces of gold per Bitcoin. Did I lose you on YouTube? Tried to get it started on Twitter again, and that was a mistake. If you guys on YouTube can hear me. Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Trigger and Lulu. So annoying. You pay for subscriptions. Usually on Twitter I get actually more views, but thanks, Robert. We're good on YouTube today. So in this case, we're super cheap, right? Just like we are in the dollar based, but the gold you can see is just way far lower. And this, again, it's not breaking the trend, it's just showing you we're setting some extremes here, some extreme lows priced in gold. But now let's do this one, all right? This evolving, which very simply moves. We're not measuring sort of every line individually, finding all these pseudo R-squareds. The governor here is going to be this gray line. The gray line, not the black line, but the gray line. Okay. And so here's gold on the quantile, and here's gold on the multiple, or evolving multiple. Actually not at the bottom for this one. And I really don't even want to say that this is like a bottom that's realistic, because it's just a guide. It's just a guide. And I'm already on record by saying I think this is our bottom, is 9 ounces of gold. If we go below 9 ounces of gold for Bitcoin, I just don't think it's going to happen. Could, but statistically very unlikely. Anyway, on the quantile multiple, you see what the bottom is there. It's 8 ounces. So again, could happen, but I think this is this is just a statistical guide to show us how cheap we are in terms of gold. And then silver. Silver's gotten even crazier. Okay, and notice we still set up a new bottom, right? Every time we used to be here, now it's here. Used to be here, yeah, it's here. So just updates every day, that's fine. But this does seem like to be like it's forming some kind of bottom. That's the quantile. Now let's do the multiple, or the evolving multiple. This is pretty crazy. So on this one, we have formed a bottom even here, which is 0.1x the trend. So I think it's interesting, right? Like we have now shown you 6 charts, 3 different assets. Anything can happen, right? Silver is literally bottoming out on both charts. It's just how it is. The dollar seems to be bottoming out on the quantile, but on the multiple, pretty far away. And gold's kind of in the middle. It's close. I mean, it's definitely bottoming out here. Here, it's also, again, I don't think it's going to hit. So 6 different ways to look at gold and silver, or 2 different ways each, really, better said. Any way you slice it, Bitcoin is generationally cheap, historically cheap. Let's go back here, which I think is still the best guideline for fiat terms. Year-end 2026, OLS 170. Worst case, 86. Now let's go back in time and imagine what these would look like. It's easier to imagine with this. Okay, so I'm going to take the 0 off. This was pretty much always painted in as the bottom. Okay. And even here, we did pierce it here. Like this formed a new bottom that definitely didn't exist at the time. And the reason I know that is because there's no other pricing data that's here. Also there a little bit, but right. So you would have, if we had looked at this back in 2022, the bottom line would have started here and then just before the puke, the 0th percentile would have been here. Okay. So this little crazy period at the end of 2022 created this line. Now, it's possible we could do that again, where we create sort of a new low. Maybe people think into this summer it's over, and then we bottom out even lower. It's totally possible, by the way. It's totally possible. But considering where we are, how fast we fell from the trend already, the craziness in the world, also how Bitcoin's getting a little bit of a bump from that craziness, I would say as well, this sort of a real puke for a couple months is unlikely. I think it's unlikely. So then you get the numbers, right? 80,000, 85,000 as a worst case scenario by the end of the year. So I think you can use that as a guideline for planning for cash flow. Maybe you want to try out some options. Be my guest. But that's how I'm looking at this. Gold is pretty wild. Silver is even wilder. But again, I would take these charts as even further proof that we're at historic lows. You can just see how cheap it is. You know, the gold bugs would like us to think that. Let me take off a lot of these bands. You know, there is some justification that this is going to settle down for a while, right? Because here, we're always pretty close to the dollar curve from 2016, right? And what I mean by that is this would settle down, it would go up, but it would settle down, go up, go down. It would stay pretty close to the black line. Here, in the case of gold as a multiple, is way over the all-time line. You know, even if you take out all this, you can almost see like, okay, this just looks like it's going to be, the curve's going to be way lower. I have a hard time believing that, in fact, because I don't think gold and silver have nearly the utility that Bitcoin has. I think storing gold is just as difficult as it was storing it 80 years ago. You guys know I tell you about the Chasing Gold book by George Tabor. Do read it. But I think it's, you know, it's this more extreme version of this. I think we'll get back. And though this might be still too high, because you can see it's almost like it's always being pulled down, right? It's almost like here we're more like where we were in, I don't know, 2016, okay, for the dollar. So what I'm saying is, yeah, it's possible we could make the argument that this would still has some room to fall. But it's still, you know, it's still a good R squared, 95%. Yeah, gold and silver might be going through some weird 100-year revaluation. Not weird, but what gold and silver bugs expect. But it's a good check on each other, right? We have Bitcoin against the dollar, Bitcoin against gold, Bitcoin against silver. You know, even if this black line levels out more, you can still very easily go back to, I don't know, let's find like the 40th percentile. Hold on. So where we are right now is 700 ounces of silver. To be precise, 843 ounces of silver for Bitcoin. And so maybe say we don't spend our time up here, but in the future, but we're more like, I don't know, let's say the 40th or 30th percentile. It's still a year from now, 4,000, 4,000 ounces of silver for Bitcoin. So it's not like it's nominally going to be so much worse than this. Yes, it could nominally be worse than the OLS, which is 8,000 possible. But it's still nominally, we can see where this trend is going. Deviation from the mean, from the regression. Lower and lower, even though we are way under trend at 47% discount right now from the trend line. Deviations go down. That is the up or down 2/3 of the time moves on a daily basis. It's just down. A little bit up now with these moves, but on a 30-day, 3.8%. 2/3 of the time, the Bitcoin price is only 3.8% up or down above this black line. 2/3 of the time on a 30-day basis. Because you see, this has been so close to the trend here. It is true on a more broad basis, like a year, it is going up with this volatility. Now up to 16%. But that volatility is not going back to here, to these levels. 100%, 70%. No way. We're getting closer to the trend line over time, not farther away. Thank you, Galbers. Great interview with What Bitcoin Did. Again, I cannot put these, I know I've said it like 1,000 times, but if I hit reply, no, I can just reply to you. That is an annoying thing about this platform, is that I can't actually put your comments in the window. But I should sound much better than before. Another thing, all right, 130,000 is the trend line, 131,000. That gives us 6,000 or 7,000 compared to what the 2017 May trend line would say, which is 124 right there, somewhere in May, 124.7. So we have not bottomed out as far as predicting, even though, yes, we are quite a bit below the trend. The trend is not at its lowest level, which is important to keep in mind. You guys remember this chart? I'm going to keep it like this for a while. This free world versus autocracy. We're going to see if the United States flips red this fall or not. But why isn't the title showing up? It's in my other, again, it's annoying. It's about $27 trillion. This is still of September, slow moving. Taiwan is obviously the next domino to fall. Iran is way overvalued in here. That's an official exchange rate, $300 billion for Iran. And right now, obviously, it's way overvalued. Russia as well, those reserves are frozen. So Taiwan is the next risk, the domino to fall at $240 billion of capital that is not controlled in the autocratic world. Monetary capital, money. When you start to think about how large some of these markets are, and you compare it to Bitcoin, and you think about now that, we're getting close to a global war. I mean, the idea of a global war, to think that it's not a global war right now. I watched an interview with Ben Hodges on the Times, which is always good. I mean, clearly might not call it a global war now, but we're getting pretty close. And I would always say that, okay, Bitcoin's doesn't really matter. It's too small. Again, this is a backwards looking chart, but in that it's slowly, slowly updated. I'm not going to get December updated for another month still, probably. But Bitcoin is moving with geopolitical tensions. How far it will go, we'll see. Another thing that's very important, again, you guys know I have lots of issues with Russia on our border, not exactly being a peaceful country, but nobody's going to change the direction on this chart. Next year, these are going to be even higher. The year after, they're going to be even higher. All right, $2 trillion. The total is annoyingly not showing up, but I will get it. Still working the bugs out. You see Ukraine now. They're going to be close to 100 billion last year spent. This was even lower than I thought going in at 64 billion, what Stockholm Institute put for them. They're now at levels of Japan, South Korea, well higher than Taiwan. it is interesting how strong silver has been, but I can show you against the dollar. It's just not. There's no history that really shows that silver will just pump and then sort of stay there. It always retraces. But it's giving it a good run. Right. And certainly, again, congrats to the gold and silver bugs. Again, here is an exponential quantile regression chart. I talked about this with Danny, right? So, you can go years around the trend line, under the trend line, above, and then all of a sudden, make a record, which is 5x, 4.9x the trend line. Okay. Off that a little bit, but still. I think dead cat bouncing, but close. Whereas if we go back to this chart for Bitcoin, those big moves just don't happen anymore on a power curve. They can happen on an exponential curve. Damn it, I lost it. I need to get this naming of my tabs to work. They can happen on an exponential curve, but very difficult to happen on a power curve. With the power curve, they should move closer together, which this doesn't do. Right? So we can see that getting, again, 7x, 8x over the trend line is just not, it's not really in the cards. Unless Bitcoin starts to move exponential. These are good ranges. Also interesting, right? The OLS starts to move above here. Yeah, no one knows what's happening in 2050, but it's just gonna depend, right? Because of the weak action that we had in the fall, this red line is being pulled down much more than it used to be, right? And even more than the OLS itself. So yeah, if I had to bet, we would be more on a gradual trend by 2040. Still a pretty good trend though at 4 million bucks per Bitcoin, or 2.6 in one of the worst cases. Let's take a look at the old UTXOs, which are going to be really helpful for us to see if we ever are really out of this bear. Okay. Diminishing, just slightly. Right, we were at 30%. Now, all of a sudden, 25%. Is that enough? It's too early to tell, in my view. Too early. Okay, this could be like any moment here. Could be like this. Could be like this. Could be like this. It's just too early to tell. if we only look at long term, right, a little bit less noise, mostly uninterrupted swings, mostly. It is encouraging, right? The slope of decline even looks like it could be bottoming out. So, encouraging. And for sure, we're not going as low as these percentages. I think 40. I think 40 is too much. Well, I never said that, did I? 40 seems like it could be the worst, right? Assuming, not even assuming, but considering we already got to 30. I guess we got to 30 on both put together. On the long term, we only got to, looks like 25. Yeah, 25. So yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath, honestly. I think this is encouraging, but it's also could be a bull trap. You know, just it could be plenty of these moves, up and then down, little Bart Simpson action, little reverse Bart Simpson, gonna reverse back. Anything like that could happen for a while. Once we truly break out of these zones, then it will be a good sign. I want to show you guys a couple of things that I watch. As you know, I'm more on geopolitics these days and defense as the world is sort of on fire. This is a great podcast. Out of the Telegraph. And then what was used to be called Battle Lines, but is now called Iran, the latest. Also out of the Telegraph. Out of the Telegraph is very, very good, in my opinion. Do they not have? Second. Looks like they don't have a separate channel yet for them, but I find that the Brits, oops, getting from one paid platform, one paid account, Google to another. Anyway, Ukraine the latest. Now this show, which is called Battle Lines, which you can't see here because of my stupid ads, is also from the Telegraph. I find that the Brits do a very good job of being still doing a lot of good on the ground journalism. I know that CNN does it, and there's such a polarizing effect in the news for Americans these days, partly because of the president always claiming that it's fake news. I'm not saying they haven't made mistakes, but I find that the Brits are quite reasoned journalists. And if you're looking for stuff in the English language, I quite enjoy it. Another one, which I fully recommend watching it in its entirety. This is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat from Rhode Island. talking about how Trump and Epstein have ties with Russia. I know there are plenty of people that say it has to be he was only an Israeli agent, or I actually don't see that many people saying he was only a Russian agent. I'm certainly not saying that, but it's good to actually see this stuff finally get into the congressional record, like stuff that I've been reading about for years, and there were just plenty of signs that he was meeting with KGB agents, former KGB, FSB agents, working with Russian girls, having Russian girls work his honey traps. And the Robert Maxwell connection, which is also Senator Whitehouse goes through here in full, has been documented for years. Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine's father, had very likely Czech, Brit, Soviet, and Israeli ties. Whether he was actually a quadruple agent is for sure. British and Israeli were his strongest ties, no doubt. But he was born a Czech and had plenty of meetings in the Soviet Union. And Maxwell met Epstein long ago. So it's actually good to have this stuff in the congressional record, finally, actually reading this stuff out. I thought it was helpful. So I would recommend this this speech actually in its entirety, if you don't know that much about the stories between Russia, Trump, Epstein, and Maxwell. But it does not mean that he was not an Israeli informant, agent, however you want to call it. Good morning, Sandro. Galbers, who are you talking about? It's a great follow for Ukraine. The Telegraph people. Let's look at Sandro's message, which I actually did not see. Ridiculous. Ukraine accuses Hungary of taking hostage bank employees who are carrying 82 million in cash and gold. They're locked in this dispute over the Druzhba pipeline, which Russia themselves hit, and now Hungary wants them to rebuild, even though Hungary didn't get themselves off of Russian oil and gas. Ukraine accused Hungary on Friday of taking hostage 7 employees of its state savings bank who were carrying around 82 million in cash and gold as Budapest vowed to stop transit shipments to the war-torn country and an oil dispute. Unbelievable. Foreign minister said they were transporting cash from Austria back to Ukraine via Hungary when they were detained. Their whereabouts are currently unknown. I mean, Ukraine continues to defy odds, and Hungary continues to pander to Putin. It's just, I cannot see how these stories don't erupt even more in the next month. It's all in for Orban right now. I mean, he's going all in on thwarting the rule of law, corruption. He got Trump to endorse him. I cannot think of a more consequential, at least for Europe, date than April 12th, when these elections are going to happen. And there's no doubt that they're going to be shenanigans would be the nice word. Unbelievable. I didn't see that. Oh yeah, Kalen is very, very good. Fantastic, fantastic reports, documentaries. Absolutely would recommend Kalen as well. This is from Forbes. It's such a wag the dog moment in America. Don't get me wrong. I certainly hope the people of Iran are able to find freedom. But yeah, I wouldn't. I just lose all my charts now. Let's find it again. Wouldn't jump to conclusions here, but I would say yeah, it's nice little rebound in the midst of global tension. But we'll have to see. SIPRI, Stockholm Institute for Peace, should be releasing 2025 numbers pretty soon. So it's a nice source to get all this data. Again, I desperately hope that I don't have to paint the US red in this chart. But Trump fired Kristi Noem, his first cabinet member who no doubt deservedly needed to be fired with all the grift from she was going to have a private plane for herself and her advisor who she was having an affair with. A lot of conflicting things, right? Got the military, which is certainly a professional organization that planned a ton for what happened in Ukraine. Sorry, what happened in Iran. But the political fallout seems very tenuous right now. Sounds like there are a lot of Republicans that are secretly not happy with the direction the White House is going. This is turning around. I'll show you Federal Reserve's balance sheet should be updated by today. I haven't checked. Let's see if it works correctly. Do I have it? No. Too bad. But maybe it will come out today. I could probably just search for it, but regardless. It's buggy again. Anyway, it is going up. You can see it's just leaking up. My dates aren't quite aligned because I do have more data than this. If you're curious what the monetary base is versus the rest of the Fed's balance sheet, it's take out other liabilities, reverse repos, government account. This is the monetary base. So this is everything that the traditional banking system and or people, because this is banknotes that are just out in society, that can use. This is why this is the core base money of the economy, which is most similar to Bitcoin, by the way, similar to Bitcoin's UTXOs. Now, the US likes to do crazy things, so it gives a lot of money to the Treasury that it doesn't have yet with taxes during certain times. It did that during COVID. Right, it's basically free money to the Treasury, like direct, money that certainly wasn't collected yet in taxes. Usually the Treasury doesn't keep much of a balance at all. They earn money from taxes and then they spend money with government expenditures. This was money directly given to the Treasury. You see that's going up a little bit now too. And then this reverse repo, which rounds it out. This is basically base money for non-banks, money market funds. And this is highly distortive of the market, but they thought that they needed to do it to control all of the liquidity in the system. So what this does is take liquidity out of the system from money market funds, hedge funds, and puts it with the Fed. And that's the Fed's balance sheet. Am I frozen? I don't even know. Can you guys hear me, see me? Let me check my own channel. I have to say, StreamYard was less buggy than this, even though the microphone was terrible. Thank you, Galbers. Thank you. So that's about it, guys. Expect some fireworks. I mean, there's going to be massive fireworks in Europe. I mean, there already is, obviously, around the world kinetically, but in Europe in the next month, I expect a lot more than just what happened to Ukrainians. With this news that Sandro pointed out, all probably good for Bitcoin. It's just crazy. There's no going back, right? Fed's balance sheet used to be something that would at least look like just the banknotes. And it probably would still look like this if they let all the businesses fail in 2008 that they should have. Let all the investors fail. But they chose to bail everybody out. So I'm quite bullish. This is bottom levels. I do not think this represents anything meaningful anymore, these outer bands. When it comes to the dollar, I could be wrong, but these things usually, these multiples tend to shrink. So this isn't the best analysis. Although I have to admit, when we do this with gold and silver, we're surprisingly cheap. Specifically with gold. Or sorry, with the God, I'm sorry, it's too early in the morning. Specifically, gold is still, I think, historically low here, not going to go lower. But silver is just crazy low on both charts. Where is... There we go. Silver's 10% of the trend and just pulling it lower every day. It's going to correct. But this is a pretty good range, I think, for the next year. $100,000 on the low end, on the high end, $250,000 by the end of the year. Quite a nice range, but that's what makes Bitcoin fun. Question from Galbers. What do I make of Professor Zhang Shuiqin's channel? I don't know who he is, but I'll check. I mean, obviously, Asia is the only theater right now that is not involved. And yeah, I mean, this guy is... it's pretty good. I have seen a couple of his videos. If you listen to Ben Hodges, who I think I mentioned earlier, just did an interview with Times Radio, also a very good source of news for non-clickbaity stuff. You know, it's possible that we'll look back already that we're in World War III. I mean, it's a global war. At least global theaters already. I really hope Europe doesn't spread. I really hope Asia doesn't spread. Certainly hope that Iran doesn't spread, but it's pretty hot right now. You know, back to the debt stuff. And interest rates. It's hard to believe that this doesn't have a major impact. Right? Here's the S&P. Let's look at the 10-year. All right, so I started to, look into all the alternative free market stuff, gold, silver. Heard about Bitcoin here, even though I wasn't buying. We were still in this sort of global bond price rise, even though there was crazy stuff already happening here, which you can see in the 3-month. Right? We started to do crazy stuff here after the GFC. We were just in a sort of general rising prices of bonds, and now that's changed. Right? From 2020, I think it's changed. Now, whether we go back to something like this, 15% on the 10-year, they're going to fight that as much as they can. But look, I mean, this was a period of volatility and war. Vietnam War is happening all through here, and rising interest rates. And then contrast that with the end of the Soviet Union. What was happening at the end of the Soviet Union? Falling interest rates. Things were getting cheaper, debt-wise. More debt, but less expensive interest. We're in the opposite scenario. I do think these things are related. I think when interest rates go up, and I don't have as much history to show you like how World War I and World War II looked, but hopefully I'll get there. But, uncertainty will cause rising interest rates unless the Federal Reserve steps in to print. And so this is a highly, highly dangerous situation financially because everybody's debt is getting more and more expensive, including the United States government. And I mean, you just look at the 3-month, we get to this inverted yield curve, and we go below zero. And these inversions are always recessions, almost always. I saw this about how Ukraine is now, I think they're really in an interesting position. They're going to supply drone defense, right? And though the United States is never going to admit how ridiculous this is after refusing to directly help other than selling, weapons to Europe. Fact is, there's one country that knows how to take down Iranian-designed drones, and that's Ukraine. They have a lot of these interceptor drones, these things that just fly quickly, right straight up. I forget what they're called even. Some sort of a drone defense, very, very cheap. They look like these right here. Take off like a rocket quickly and then knock them down. This is not how they take off. It's like pointing down. But I hope that guy, just to say my 2 cents on this guy. So this Zhang Zhuoiqin, I'm smart guy, whatever, great YouTube, way better YouTube analytics than I could do. He is a little bit on the bombast from what I've seen, just a little bit. And these guys I can't even stand anymore. I mean, they're so anti-Ukraine and terrible. I mean, look, great views, whatever. I don't even spend my time watching stuff like this. Sorry. These guys have been wrong on Ukraine always. It's great clicks to say the U.S. will lose. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but they're still the most capable military. Whether this was a stupid decision might be. Time will tell, but they're still the most capable military. And this way again, I watch those British newspapers much more. The Telegraph, the Times. They're in some sense independent. They're not party to the conflict. They have just a more grounded view. So yeah, I don't watch those guys anymore. Like any Piers Morgan, Breaking Points, all these shows, it's just very bombastic and not a lot of substance. More bugs again. Why is this showing dollars? I got to get back. There we go. There's percents. one of you guys recommended Frank de Cotter, who I have started to read lately. Really interesting Dutch historian who is very good on China. I just saw he did an interview with Scaramucci saying that China is not a superpower, talking about the complexities of a communist party trying to, plan all these things in a centralized manner. Again, I'm not saying the U.S. is perfect and going to do all things great. And as I said, I'm very scared that the U.S. might flip red here as far as not being democratic. I don't think it's going to happen. I think free and fair elections will prevail, but we can all see where this is going in the United States, and it's very dicey. But I do think that, free countries have to win. We just have to win here. We can't let Russia and China win. And then Iran, from that perspective, okay, I know the U.S. was taken down by a tribal mountain regime in Afghanistan after 20 years of putting $1 trillion in. So I'm not going to say that it's money that wins wars, but the biggest danger I see is that the American people don't rise up and temper a dark path that America is on right now. Just like the path that Russia's on, just like the path that that Hungary's on. I don't think enough of the American people understand that, Hungary's state media is monolithic, and Russia has banned all Western apps, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, highly throttled. So I wouldn't, that's just my 2 cents. These guys, you get a lot of quick clicks for saying that America's going down. Satan is going down, as the mullahs refer to America. Sorry, I'm just reading your comments. Yeah, I agree with you. And you're probably right. It this guy's super smart. I have seen him, so I know that he is. But I just know the line. Just like you guys know my line. I'm not gonna cheer on Putin. I'm not gonna cheer on dictators. But that's what these guys. Maybe not him, but for sure people on Breaking Points, for sure Mearsheimer, all these guys. That's just a cottage industry of contrarianism. Did he predict the war? I'll check him out. So here's one that I can tell you is factually incorrect. Why the West erased the truth about Prussia. Russia might have erased the truth about Prussia. Prussia was a German stronghold, northern Germanic stronghold. It has nothing to do with the West erasing it. They just got taken over by Russia. There's 800 years of Germanic rule in Königsberg. Has nothing to do with Russia at all. And yet Russia has turned it into a shithole over the last 80 years. I know this area very well. I know the history very well. I'll watch to this video here, which only gets 68,000 views. Although it was released yesterday, so. Yeah. Anyway, my thoughts. Good morning, Daniel. Thank you. Hope you're well as well. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, everything that's happening in the world, no doubt, is the temperature is as high as it goes. It can only go higher. The only thing that would tip it over is if China goes. If China goes for Taiwan. You know, Ambassador Bolton, who I never liked in the Bush administration, but he's no doubt that he's a super smart guy, always wanted Iran to be taken out. He says that he does not believe that China will go in militarily for Taiwan, but he believes that they will go in and blockade Taiwan. Because they've seen how Ukraine has been turned to rubble. But if you go in and you just blockade the West with your, however many military boats more in number that China has than the U.S. now in the South China Sea. Okay, they might not have the biggest aircraft carriers, but they have a huge fleet of boats that could absolutely blockade Taiwan and then see what we're going to do. So maybe that's what will happen. But another thing, which I think a lot about, is I think that the West loves to only, be contrarian. Like I said, the cottage industry of contrarianism. Call out the faults that they see because they understand the language, they understand like it's their own world. But again, if you look at Russia, or if you look at like Frank Dakota was saying about the terrible management in China, it could be that they have plenty of problems there too. It could be, China's not a tested military. I'm not saying that they can't compete with the US. I'm sure that they can. But let's look at all the territories that Russia took from China. Which includes Mongolia, I believe, but that's would never come back, I presume. Let me find it. I think this is it. This is from a year ago. Yeah, this is Mongolia, so they're not getting that. I mean, theoretically, not getting that back. It's when it was unified, but this outer Mongolia in this area. Who knows? Maybe they will. Maybe they will take that. Ah, interesting. Yeah, Silicon Shield threat negates any logic of China taking Taiwan. I seriously doubt they'll ever do that. Well, they've said it. I don't know if you guys like Ryan Macbeth. I like him, and he's said many times that China has said between 2027 and 2028 they should at least be ready to take Taiwan. I'm taking his word for it that they actually said that on record, but I guess they have. My restream is very buggy still. I hope you guys can hear me all right. It's not even working on Twitter, but we'll get it soon. You guys let me know as well, please, what else you're following. I will look up that Zhang fellow more. Thanks for telling me. What can I say? Bitcoin keeps us grounded, right? Nobody's really paying attention to it now. And if you really think gold is going to protect you, we have the lesson in history. So I'm pretty bullish, guys. 99% certain these are bottoming levels. This is a little bit crazy, but it seems to be the same. All right, guys. I'm going to try to work on my connections here, my settings, but thank you for tuning in. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. First weekend of spring, right? Here in Europe, Northern Hemisphere. Stay safe. Spend time with your family. And I will catch you guys